to today's our session. Today's is our 50th continuous day of webinar, and our session is 66th webinar we are having. And Mr. N. Venkatraman sir addressed so many times in our webinar series. Now once again we have requested sir to address on the Black Money Act. So far as the Black Money Act is concerned, the Madras High Court has contributed much. Of course, the first case was appeared by our senior Mr. N. Venkatraman only. So today we'll be having an enlightening session on the Black Money Act and the overall view of the black money itself. So with this in a brief introduction, I welcome Mr. N. Venkatraman, senior advocate to present this lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Pratik, can you give me screen sharing, please?
Yes, sir. I have enabled it, sir. Yes, sir. It is seen properly.
Yeah. Can I start?
Sure, sir. Yes, sir.
Mala Sudha Kumbha Vibodha Mudra Vidyavirajat Karavari Jatam Apara Karunya Sudamburashim Shri Sharadambam Pranatosmi Nityam. My dear friends and well-wishers, happy to be here again. This time, of course, with a new genre, though a very old rhythm, which would have rung in our ears several times and for several decades, to discuss black money in the backdrop of this post-COVID or a recovery COVID situation makes this topic very apt and relevant. Before I proceed to first speak, I should thank my two juniors, Jayalakshmi and Ariman Gulati, who sat through because APS called me 2 days back and said, we need to shift the talk on freedom of press to next Saturday. So this Saturday slot has to be black money, should get ready, and gave some about 36-40 hours for us. These two children sat through with us, and we could bring this PowerPoint because of their help. And therefore, I'm duty bound to thank both of them. Thanks, Jaya, and thanks, Aryaman. I must also acknowledge and refer to these are the texts on which this talk has been prepared. The books of Professor Vaidyanathan and Shailendra Kumar. Then the reports submitted by the CBDT in 2012, and a very, very detailed account by 4 eminent personalities of India who had compiled the multifaceted perspectives of black money. Shri Gurumurthy, Ajit Doval, Professor Vaidyanathan, and Mahesh Jetmalani. The various articles authored by Gurumurthy sir. Then this Indian Institute of Management report by Charan Singh is something to do with demonetization. So there is something to speak about that. And of course, Dr. Vaidya Subramaniam, the Vice Chancellor of Shastra Deemed University, who has conducted a lot of programs on this topic. And he's very, very current on the subject. He could add value. Even this morning, he sent me a very important slide on education. Thank you, Vaidya sir. And various articles, news clippings, and website reports together constitute the preparation which we are likely to see for the next few minutes. What is the definition of black money? We talk about it, but what do you mean by black money? See, when you receive an income and do not pay tax, that money partakes the character of black money. What does it mean? Not pay tax. Suppose I'm an agriculturist. I earn agricultural income. Am I generating black money? So, A, what is taxable but not paid? will constitute on the first category. What is not taxable, what is taxable and not paid will come under the third category. What is not taxable but still not accounted will come under the first category. You buy a soap and you pay cash, and the stores take that cash into their coffers and they start circulating it as cash. Then it's an income earned, liable to tax and not paid, and therefore becomes black money. An agriculturist who doesn't maintain accounts, he need not pay tax, but nobody says he should not maintain accounts. Then you can always put a mice and take a dinosaur, or put a dinosaur and take a mice in terms of loss and profits when it comes to agricultural produce. This is a huge sector. So that again becomes, such an earning becomes a black money, and money earned out of illegal methods certainly constitutes black money. And black money and corruption are sesame twins. They can never be separated. Corruption breeds the biggest chunk of black money all over the world, especially the post-globalization era. Before we venture to understand some basic concepts, three important key principles should be borne in mind. Only then we can venture into the study of black money. It's like reading economics. You can start from anywhere and end up anywhere. Such a wide subject. So certain ground rules we need to basically formulate before we can take the subject on hand and then deal it. See, there are three key elements to black money: generation, infiltration, and use. Why this is put here is, all the three need not land in the same place. Country A can generate black money, and it can infiltrate in 10 different countries, and it can find its use in 100 different ways. For example, India is considered to be a black money generating nation. It's a center which can generate black money because there is so much bandwidth for us to do that. So there are generating economies, the BRIC countries, especially Brazil, Russia, India, and China, or they lead the list in terms of generation of black money. Now, the second aspect to black money is, there are three main sources. Their generation comes under different categories, which I'll show you a little later. But essentially, they touch upon these three basic areas: crime, corruption, and tax evasion. And more importantly, when it comes to tax evasion, it again has three bottom lines to it. It can result in cheaper money, legitimate money made available cheap. I will explain it a little later. How unaffordable goods become affordable goods because of black money. Cheaper money is one angle of black money. Two, there are, like we have banks, there are fund managers of black money across nations. If they run it like a bank. So if somebody wants, you don't have to actually generate black money. If you want black money, then it is available in the market. You can go and buy it. And there is a price for it. So there are parallel banking systems who run a black money bank economy. And more importantly, third is, nations have identified themselves and won the trust of various other countries that they become entrepreneurial countries generating black money. A fund manager gives fund and you have to only pay interest. It's service. Whereas an entrepreneur country, you give money to them. They will invest it in their own way, multiply the money and give it to you in many folds. So these are the positions or avatars which black money technically can take. So these three aspects should be borne in mind whenever we refer to a topic on black money. Otherwise, it will be a rudderless ship. You will ultimately feel very hazy about it. Now, with this background, let us discuss the first two sub-points in this slide, and the rest will collapse into it. Basically, the whole world which depends on black money, not a single country is an exception. But how they use it, how they generate it, how they identify it depends on the local conditions and the needs. Now, the two broad tax havens, you can say three, entrepreneurial is also one, which I will refer to again. The two broad tax havens that operate in the world. What do you mean by a tax haven? See, India imposes 33% tax. US imposes 35% tax. Singapore imposes higher tax. So anywhere taxation, income tax is not like your GST at 18 or 15 or 12 or 5 or 10. It's at a higher rate. Therefore, there are countries which offer or attract business or investments saying that our jurisdiction will offer you a lower rate of tax. It's not something very new to us. I mean, living in Tamil Nadu, the kind of impact we have all faced prior to 2005, before VAT came into picture between Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry, is a typical example. In Tamil Nadu, if you want to sell a refrigerator, it has to suffer 12-13% tax, because only then you can run the machinery, because there are so many people to take care. Whereas Pondicherry can afford with just, you can put 1% tax across all goods, it will still be a surplus economy. Such a small state, and it's our neighbor state. So you would have, how many cases you would have argued, you would have defended, you would have advised. Initially, goods will go as consignment and come back. Then papers will go as though lorries have gone and come back. Finally, nothing will go, but still you will get an invoice from Pondicherry saying it is 1% tax, and the next door neighbor will deliver the fridge to you. So this lower tax jurisdiction works in that manner. In a Pondicherry, Tamil Nadu scenario, it works this way. But in a global scenario, it works in a very interesting way. For example, see, let's take a product from USA. You want a phone or say a computer software, any item. Say it's $100. What can, India is the buyer, buying country, US is a selling country. So what do? US can invoice India at $100, collect $100 from India, offer it to tax in USA and pay 33-35% tax, which means it is $35. Now, Ireland will say, it's a small country. Ireland says, I can offer a low tax jurisdiction at 12.5%. That's why those who know international taxation, they know the double sandwich model, Ireland and Netherlands, which is like double sandwich means it's going twice up and down, which is exactly the Pondicherry Tamil Nadu model, a global scale. Now, what will US do? The company which can produce the product will own the patent or own the trademark, own the brand, own the royalty, or own the intangible right. And it will create a subsidiary in Ireland and allow manufacture and replication there. Then what will Ireland do? It will hire the services of its own subsidiary at Singapore. which is again a low tax jurisdiction in terms of international taxation. And it will, if Ireland is having the right to produce, the owner holds the intangible, the right to produce is with Ireland. Ireland will license it to Singapore for Asia Pacific market. It will hold the license itself for the European market. Then Singapore will sell to India at $100. So India will remit Singapore $100. Singapore will retain $15, give $85 to Ireland. And Ireland will retain $70 and give $15 as royalty to the owner of the intangible in US. So now what US gets a tax is 35% on $15. Ireland will tax $70 at 12.5%. And Singapore will tax $15 again at a very less rate. Now, between US and Ireland, you come to the second bullet, US and Ireland, if there is a Cayman Island, a BV or a Liechtenstein or a Luxembourg, countries you will have to discover in the geography map. Now you will have to actually go by ship or boat or navigate or swim to reach that place. So they will say, I will offer you zero tax. So what happens if Ireland is going to push $70 into that company in Cayman Island? What happens? $1.5 is the tax in US. Again, some $0.50 or so in Ireland, and again $1 or $2 in Singapore. All put together, the transaction suffers only 4% tax as against 35% tax. This was the global model which was running, say, till 2009. And even after that, it spilled over for next, after 5, 6, 7 years after that also. So when the global meltdown happened, US said, enough is enough, we can't run with 4% collection. We should now shoot down these tax habits. So this is an economic model. Everything is accounted. Every transaction is booked. What you get in the process is, see, if US gets $35 as tax, the recovery is only $65 for the economic recovery in the transaction. Whereas if the cumulative tax is only $4, $30, $31 goes to Cayman Island out of that 70. You have expenses and other things, profit share. So there is an extra $30, $31 sitting in Cayman Island. What will it do? It will again come back as an investment. That's why we say these jurisdictions, the moment there's no other activity, landing money into that jurisdiction makes money cheaper in the international market. So you get back $31, whichever country you want to partner with for investment, you will get back $31, which is untaxed. So these fund managers will keep those reserves. Anybody can go and purchase. So people who have entrepreneurial skills need not have funds. People who generate funds need not have entrepreneurial skills. There'll be a marriage about it. It's like a bank. Like you go and borrow bank for setting up an office. They can go and borrow from these fund managers. So a combination of these two globally operated as an economic model, and the underlying substance being untaxed money resulting in the generation of black money. So I'm putting it in a simple way, 1 or 2 countries and 1 or 2 structures. For this to happen, you will have to involve, say, 20, 30 structures. What do you mean by 20, 30 structures? It's like diffusing the light through several filters. You should keep passing the monies through different nations and different structures and different businesses, that at some point of time, the origin of the money cannot be traced. so complex it will be. And that happens through rest of the bullets in that in this slide. What therefore you need, everybody needs multiple shell companies. Companies who have only namesake. In fact, the last bullet is a very popular quote. Delaware is an important place in US. There is a street which alone has some 3 lakh companies. One street has address of some 3 lakh plus companies. And it is very commonly told, what do you mean by Delaware? Is dollars and euros laundered and washed at reasonable expenses. So money becomes cheaper through those routes. Now you have more than 30 million shell companies were operating in the world. And what do these shell companies and the rest of them do? See, it is like this. As you have fund managers who fund you, as you have businessman who needs this fund at a cheaper rate, you also have third-party intermediaries who will do all the structuring for you based on the country of choice you make. There are service providers. If you want to pay one corporation something in the corporation, don't you not outsource somebody who knows so very well, who is well connected with the corporation guys? It is like this. So you have professional service providers. He will give you structure. He will give you bogus entities. He will give you binami names. He will give you fellows who will have passport for 10 different countries. He will like a avatar. He will appear in any country, any day he wants. So this is all part of the system. And together, they operate a tax haven. Now, this is okay, you have a tax haven is okay, but money has to be generated. So what forces people to resort to black money? Attitude not to pay tax. You just don't want to pay tax. India is a typical nation. Out of 130 crores, the tax compliant rate is 5 to 6%. In fact, Professor Vaidyanathan will say, no, you're wrong. You should divide 130 into basically 4 as a family. Therefore, it is only 30 crores. And 18 crores go to agriculture. So out of 12 crores, if you put 6% on 130 crores, that's the compliance rate you should compute. Well, theoretically, it may sound very positive, but that's not how we measure. When you say all over the world, the index is measuring tax percentage vis-a-vis GDP. What do you mean by GDP? Gross domestic product. All of us would have heard it a million times. It is nothing but the total production of manufactured goods and the value of total production of manufactured goods, the total value of services put together. That will constitute the GDP of a nation. So India's tax compliance, I'm going to show a slide a little later, is hardly anything. Very half to 1/3 or half of the percentage compared to the world standards. So these two, attitude is a big challenge, and high rates of taxes, which India has been considerably reducing in the last 15 years. But if you see the growth chart in personal income tax and in income tax rate, income tax compliance, in 45 years, we have grown only by 7%. Very, very, very marginal. So India is a country which citizens dodge paying taxes. And this rest of them add to, this is how black money gets generated at the source. You don't account your receipt. So take for India, you can buy it online, you can buy it offline. When you buy it online, you will swipe a credit card. It therefore gets booked. But when you buy the same product offline, there is a possibility for you to offer it as a cash and then take delivery, in which case it may go untaxed. Suppression of receipts, inflation of expenditure. You overbook your expenditure. See, over-invoicing and inflation of expenditure became the cardinal principle all over the world post-globalization. Everybody, in fact, the taxes we have all paid in, whoever has paid, especially in the corporate sector. It's a universal truth. Their tax payment would be more than 25% than what normally tax is able to be paid by the company. He will still have an assessment proceedings, he will still have an attachment. But take it from me, every company will try to overshoot by 20-25% because based on which it has loans, based on which it has a corporate standing, based on which share market might will improve. There are several other benefits to it. See what happened in one of the computer companies in India. All that he did finally was started to print his own bank passbooks. Instead of bank entering the accounts, actual account, he started to print and gave it. Because he had to compete with 5 more major players in the country in the same industry. So how does he compete? He started to show to his investors, this is my balance sheet, and these are my credentials, these are my results. And what happened? It just burst one fine day because there was no underlying wealth as reported, as shown or as displayed. So this overinflation, under-invoicing, smuggling, counterfeit is again. When I come to demonetization in 2 minutes I'll spend on this. India has 3 big counterfeit transacting points: Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. All of us know about it. And government control and political factors, I'll come to it a little later. Then, what is wrong, sir, in having a tax haven? You say that you are getting cheaper money. So after all, we should encourage. All of us encouraged. All of us encourage. See, for us, India, it's normally the Mauritius route, where there is no capital gains tax. See, there is a difference between income and capital. Income is liable to tax. Capital is not liable to tax. Debt or loan is not liable to tax. So how do you bring your income into India? You don't bring the income. You bring only as a debt. So somebody from some countries, 3 partners join together. They start a subsidiary in Mauritius and a holding structure in India and say they invest, say, 1,000 crores. And after 10 years or 5 years, 1,000 crores becomes 10,000 crores value. Now, if you sell the Indian entity share, the holding company structure, suppose somebody wants to buy it at 10,000 crores. If he buys the holding company share, he will have to pay capital gains tax of 20% in India. Whereas the same share in Mauritius, which is 100% subsidiary, which is nothing but our Burma Bazaar post office like 10 by 10 shop. If he buys the same share at 10,000 crores at Mauritius, there is no capital gains tax at Mauritius. So by buying the Mauritius share, you can actually hold the shares of the holding entity in India and the entire net worth of assets, because the entire asset lives only in India. So you save 2,000 crores of capital gains tax. And the 2,000 crores will be recycled back into India as an FDI investment. So, higher rate of inflation, increase in liability, social development, economic growth, and anti-social, all these becomes, at one stage you are generating money because it's coming into India, more money is coming into India. But because it is an untaxed money, see, the source can be 2. If you generate it from India and then bring it, then it is not taxed at both points. If you don't generate, you buy it from the fund manager and then give it. And then after the improvement happens after 5 years and the capital gains don't get taxed, again, India is a loser to that extent. So these are the ill effects of tax haven, which every country started to understand and realize post the global meltdown. What are the avenues, especially in a country like India? What are the avenues to make black money? You must have avenues, openings to generate. Land and real estate is anything to do with agricultural land and real estate. It's a huge mafia. And this generates potentially a huge percentage of black money. As I said, You can put a mice and take a dinosaur out of it. You can put a dinosaur and take a mice out of it. Any amount of profits you book in agriculture. In fact, two things baffle. We always say when we do a matter also, the kind of constructions, see, the cement is a fairly organized industry. Mini cement plants, again, evade beauty. Basically, cement plants are more organized than steel industries. So every building structure requires steel and cement. If you actually crack them and find out the quantity of consumption which they have used in their books, every skyscraper in this country will be an engineering marvel, built only on cement, without steel, or negligible quantity of steel. Steel is a black industry. So it is perplexing, quite perplexing. This is one area which generates a lot of black money, gold. In fact, Dr. Vaidya was saying, in fact, last week we used it in one of the speeches. He used to say, if India stops purchase of gold for 2 days, we can send 2 Mangalyans to space. That's the kind of consumption we have on gold. When I close the talk, I will refer to gold and the FDI investment as to how we need to tap it post-COVID. Gold is a huge, huge black money generating object. Stocks and derivatives. See, why we say stocks? How do you generate black money out of? What is this, sir? You have a script. And the script is purchased by people. All stock exchange is accounting it. Duly reflected. Everything is transparent. What are you talking? How does stock market generate black money? See, a man who wants to pump black money and convert it into white, what will he do? He will choose one completely unknown stock value 10 rupees. And he will start investing in it, pushing. So the stock will go from 10 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,200. Then it will gain visibility in the exchange. People will say, oh God, this is increasing every day. So people will start, all you and me, like gullible investors, will start buying a 10 rupee share at 1,200 rupees. So it's a laundering machine. So he will keep laundering all his black money into it. The moment saturation, he has laundered the whole thing, whitewashed. That fellow, that rogue knows when to exit. He will suddenly withdraw, all the money is out of it. And the stocks will come back to 1 rupee. And you and I would have to bear the loss. So derivative is still worse. Stock, at least you can at least see the credibility. If you put little interest, you can find it out. Derivative is a magic. You convert a debt into a saleable proceed income, convert a debit into an debt into an asset in your balance sheet, and starts showing that asset as a recoverable, and then starts trading on it. This was a instrument discovered post 2009 to recover. And this derivative economy is assumed to be anywhere between 60 trillion to 600 trillion. God, it's a guess by everybody. And post-COVID, you'll all know what happens to all these type of gambling. Sports, huge. If all of us stop watching news channels and sports channels for 1 year, we'll say we'll boycott. Most of them will have to be closed. Globalization middlemen, I'll come. In fact, there are 6 other textbooks which I read on this, how global black money works. It's a huge area, wonderfully captured by different authors. Lack of time, therefore, we'll have it as part 2 some other time. There is so much, this all, see, post-globalization, black money, if somebody can generate 10 lakh, 15 lakhs, 5 lakhs black money in India, was considered to be a terrific guy. If theaters can sell, it will show a film which not even 10%, 10 people will say, but it would have torn at least 500 tickets as sold and offer it. So these are all the small ways the guys were making black money. Global black money today, 10,000 crores, 25,000 crores is just not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. So education. In fact, Dr. Vaidya sent me a report today. 6,000 crores per year India generates as black money out of capitation fee. He can say that because he's one university from day 1 in 84 till date and future, not a rupee is taken as capitation fee. 6,000 crores a year you generate capitation fee, black money as capitation fee. Bank scams. See, RBI has, as a regulator, controls 4 types of banks in India: scheduled banks, private banks, NBFCs, and cooperative banks. And we have seen large-scale scams in all the 4 sectors. Informal economy, agriculture, and then all our stores. And because they don't want to, they are used to handling, and after all, they handle meager cash. It's not that you can handle 1 crore, 10 crore, 100 crore in cash economy. It's not possible. So they don't need bank, they don't need structures. Liquor. For every state government, this is a real money spinner. Except for production, the moment it is produced and labeled, then it comes under government control till it is sold by the government shops to the consumer. So if you want to book 10 bottles as production, 3 bottles as sold and 1 bottle as unsold, 6 bottles as somebody's money, it goes. All these audits, everything is done. It's all completely orchestrated by the local officials. So liquor is a huge money spinning, black money spinning business in India. And legitimate money becoming illegitimate. You will pay, you will swipe a credit card and then it goes into the transactional mode, the platform records it. But the dealer who sells it, after booking it, draws the money and allows it to circulate a percentage of it in cash towards a nefarious activity, then legitimate money goes out of the stream. Dangerous. And all this gets sustained brilliantly because of slow investigation and deductive mechanism and slow court process. See, the kind of people, the resource, whether it is a normal policeman who needs for security or an investigation officer in the country for these offenses, they are very eager. If a particular officer of a very high order who is investigating sensitive matters, if you ask somebody from a company A to come today, then if a second statement has to be recorded, he gives a date after 45 days. Because he has to investigate 45 other cases for the next 45 days. So this is the infrastructure inability, which again becomes a sourcing ground. Arms trafficking, terrorism, treaty shopping, which I dealt, tax haven. If you insulate it through an agreement with that nation, then it becomes, Mauritius is one example of a treaty shopping. All of us, why did India do, you'll ask? Because UK is doing, because Japan is doing, Singapore is doing, US is doing. That's why Vodafone said, why it is right. I'll come to it in a minute's time. Counterfeit point and Hawala. Hawala can be either cash or gold. Both happens in Hawala transaction. What do you mean by Hawala? See, suppose you have to give somebody, your cousin, some gift in Delhi, 1,000 rupees check. So you call your cousin, say you give her 1,000 rupees, whenever I meet, I give. This is something which transactional point is between 2 known and for an end use of some marriage or something. But if two people in India, one end from Kanyakumari to Delhi say, I need to transact 10 crores and he gives 10 crores and he gives, because money cannot be moved, it becomes Hawala. And if it happens cross-border, it becomes cross-border Hawala. So this is again a huge, so money actually physically doesn't move as we all think. How does this political money get circulated? You pay a voter and you know how he or she is going to spend it. That's exactly what the report says. So they go to the spending channel and recover back the money after paying them a commission. So this 2,000 or 5,000 which is given comes back, recycled, rebundled and kept ready for the next dispensation. The whole track goes again and again and again. You don't have to generate it every time. It's not possible. So that's how it happens. Now, what are the economic impacts of this black money? It has both good effects and you'll be surprised. What are you saying, sir? You've been talking for half an hour or 40 minutes now. so discouraging with all these facts and say that's good for the country. Yeah, it does good also. It also does good. How does it do good? I've been telling you, cheaper money, cheaper investments, interfacing structures which does not tax debt or capital or capital gains. Mauritius, for example, in India, you will have same thing in Cayman Island, you will have same thing in BVI, you will have same thing in Atlas in Netherlands. Every geographical territory has their own, because the business and partners, they choose which destination and therefore which treaty and therefore which route. So when you get cheaper money in the FDI, see, it comes either as equity, the FDI route as an investment, or as a loan through a GDR. Now, this money, because it is invested in India, it enhances employment opportunity. It enhances production. It enhances consumption. Therefore, more money gets circulated, more income is generated. People have more money in their pockets. And because there is more consumption, the cost of rendition of service or production of goods starts coming down. None of us could have afforded the cars or any of the MNC branded, starting from a stove. None of us can afford to buy it at its intrinsic price if it had to be manufactured or rendered after the transaction is a clean transaction with tax. It is impossible. That's why I say, if you want to manufacture you can have a gold bar, but if you want to manufacture an ornament, you have to add some alloy, copper to it. Only then you can make an ornament. Therefore, every economy, to ensure goods are available at affordable prices, encourage infusion of black money through these investments. And therefore, the Supreme Court in Vodafone said, if you see the length of the investment, see the strength of the investment, see how much it has absorbed in terms of employment, productivity, how much of taxes are being paid, what is its value addition to a nation? If it satisfies, and see what is its future plan, if the investment is going to stay back in India in spite of a transfer, then whether you are governed by treaty or not governed by treaty, don't tax the transaction to capital gains, because ultimately it has only enhanced or allowed the country to grow. Don't tax them and take it out. Because you will take the money out, suck the money out of the supply chain, then it's going to bring the economy down. You can't afford to do it. No nation has done it. So we will also not do it. So this is the good side of generation of black money. But it also has the bad side, because the same route can be used by trusts, by anybody, any charitable organizations, X, Y, Z, or even a business structure. Same route is used to bring money through a structure and use it for evil purposes. And one such big blast India had a decade back was this participatory notes. See, if you and I have to buy a stock, our KYC compliance will always remain very, very stupendous. But if a foreign investor is going to bring money through a P note, it ensured that identity is not shown. It ensured that it's a government document. It said you should not reveal your identity and give money to India. We will not ask the source. So imagine if those monies come into India, not necessarily they will all be plowed, because if it's going to be plowed for a good purpose, then the structure can always be shown. Because he will have to show it, because he has to record the transaction. Unless his investment increases in value, he cannot sell it at a profit. He has not come to do business with charity in mind. So P-notes was a huge damning exercise in India for infusion of ill-gotten wealth through an ill-gotten structure for ill-gotten purposes. Now, what does black money? We saw the good side of it. Now we'll see the bad side of it. What does black money actually do? It actually weakens every nation. Every growing nation. When it comes to political, it is one of the biggest. See, today, if there's a vote swing of say 2 to 3-4%, if votes between two contesting candidates, the swing is found to be 2 to 4. Those constituencies are finally fought only by purchase votes. Rigged. And these monies, therefore, change the political dimensions and fit. If so much of money is invested to win a seat, you can understand, it's an investment. Nobody is going to do charity after winning the elections. So this is one huge area. And terrorism, violence, this route works only in this corridor. In fact, when I cited the cryptocurrency judgment, Luxembourg, one of the tax havens, they said we recognize crypto as an official currency when none of the nations have so far declared it so. It has the properties of a currency, but it has not been declared as a legal tender as yet. But Luxembourg, which is a tax haven, has declared it. So it becomes a hub. And cryptocurrency is completely private. Your identity is concealed forever. No one will know how much you are worth. So these are the damning effects of black money in the political structure. In the social structure, see, you would have seen the last 10-12 years. Anybody can organize huge protests for any length of period. And it requires a lot of funding. Nobody comes and sits there for a Dandi march. So all this, in fact, there is a Smith-Spanner book, some author, he's a professor in the US. He has written a book, how innovative techniques will happen in democratic, 170 techniques he has captured in a book. These are all the techniques which will be used to block, to bring down what happened in Egypt, what happened in Hong Kong, what happened any part of the world. It's all the techniques, 170 such techniques have been found, that these are all the possible techniques which future world will use. Whenever they want, whenever they feel it convenient. And how does it happen? Unless you have money behind it. Drug and immoral trafficking. This press media, we will touch it on Saturday, next Saturday. Then it's huge threat to religion, religious practices, traditions, values, and culture. Youth are the real victims out of this. Your style of life, your style of thinking, the way you approach questioning, all this happens out of what? Because of luxury. And freedom in the space you get, the media space you get to contribute. Therefore, the texture of a nation can easily be converted, whitewashed. At the roots, you can pour acid and kill it. This happens socially in developing nations. Then arms market and black money and corruption are, they're inseparable. Any part of the world. And whichever nation buys a lot of arms, historically it is captured with evidence that area will be a zone of conflict, zone of political unrest and instability and tension. And we have friends and foes all around us. So this is one. And this is very important. we have seen all these reasons. How does it happen ultimately? This is something which the Supreme Court has said. The nexus between the maker of the law, the keeper of the law, and the breaker of the law is unbreakable. So we keep attempting so many things. We also keep attempting in this direction. The biggest, two things happened in USA which triggered them to think about this. One was the 9/11 attack. They started to hunt on the terrorist funding. And in 8 years' time, they virtually closed it. It took 8 years and they finally cleaned it up. And 2009 meltdown resulted in global G20 summit, then doing the reinvention. Of course, there is a clear school of thought. There is enough text also to support. The beneficiaries of G20 is they wanted to bring, because so much, 1 trillion, 2 trillion, you invest into the market to bail them out. So they wanted a unification of countries to support, and the biggest beneficiaries are America and UK. That's why Germany and France opposed it beyond a point. We said, I think we are fed up with you. There is no equal benefits which flow into us. And terrorism is this FATFA, which is a France-based global organization, which keep listing and delisting. But this is not, it's not you produce evidence on a paper and then it gets declared. As a political, anything global movement will have a political ramification. Exchange of information, this is something which is improving, which has considerably improved. See, we all would have seen in the Tamil cinema in those days, a villain with a hat and a cooling glass, a box on the left hand and a pistol on the right hand. And the highest he will say, 10 lakhs black money in Swiss account. All this, how many times you would have heard? So Swiss was an origin, even it all emerged during the First World War and it legitimized during the Second World War. That's what history says. Switzerland is a landlocked country. Once the World War I was over, then all the European Union said you have to fund. Switzerland quietly said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a party to it. Every other European nation increased the taxes. So Switzerland said, you can come and open Swiss bank accounts. We will conceal and protect secrecy. So that's how it originated. And when you say secrecy, because that country's law, you must read Swiss law. Very, very draconic prior to 2011. Nothing can be given by that nation. It's a sovereign commitment. So they started to puncture this everywhere. He said, now several hundreds plus countries have signed this EOIA document. At least post 2011 transaction. Prior to that, tug of war is going on. Post 2011, on a drop of a mail or on a call, the bank, whichever part you are, should furnish information. That is happening in a big way. Then US thought, see, it's only 4% tax we have been getting. Okay, you do business anyway. It kept on hunting the structure beyond a point it couldn't do anything. So it said, if it is an American company, its entire global income will be taxed in America 11%. You can have any structure you want. The easiest way. Of course, it is anti-BEPS. That is why BEPS have not come. We have been talking about BEPS for 5 years. BEPS have not seen the light because America is against BEPS, basic erosion. Now, India will be a beneficiary out of BEPS, whereas America will be a loser out of BEPS. Then COVID deglobalization, at least now we should realize. See, globalization has escalated all the structures. Where will you think of a FDI investment of 1 lakh crore, 10 billion, 15 billion? It's all now. Currently, in this COVID situation, I can tell you, with a great sense of responsibility, investments to the tune of 2 lakh crores are all applied. It's all there in the public. Investments into India, people are ready to invest to the extent of 2 lakh crores. Business deals are happening. So our corporate strength is appreciated during COVID recovery period. So something, when it has impacted all of us who are all in the regular economy, in the mainstream economy, it has affected everybody's life. Imagine in this last 100 days, Other than essentials, have we done anything? One luxury. And all of us are living happily with our families. So God has taught us what is our basic nature and what is the difference between need and greed. I only wish the black market economy also is impacted with COVID. It will. It will. There will be some recovery, with one hope nature will give to all of us. And those Supreme Court decisions, SIT, all this is all in the happening stage only. These are the agendas we had to declare all these 5 national goals, but we are marching towards it. That's all we can say at this point of time. Now, yeah, Prateek, I have about 7-8 minutes more, or I can close this without even to deal with it.
Sir, we have time, sir.
Okay, fine. See, there are different ways of thinking. Demonetization has succeeded or not. That's a separate subject by itself. But you must understand why that pitch of demonetization at least happened. Because black money and demonetization are again a pairs. We should understand at least why did it happen. See, when any small nation or a developed nation pays about 35% GDP, tax GDP ratio is in the range of 33 to 35%. Suppose 10 lakh crores is the total GDP, 3.5 lakh crores will be recovered as taxes. Whereas India tax ratio to GDP is only 18%, half of it. And therefore, rest of the half is not coming, even though we have so much of economic activity. Can you imagine the volume of business which India does? And only instead of recovering 30-33%, or realistically speaking 27-28%, wherever you pitch, 10 to 15% difference non-recovery, where does it go? And when they computed it on 31st March, this is a report from that IBIT professor, IIM Bangalore professor. On 31st March, they found out 16,415 billion is the total currency circulation. In 2001, our 1,000 rupee and later 2,000 rupee was only at 1.7% consumption rate. In 2016, it was 38.6%. Our 500 rupee note in 1990 started with 4% consumption. It shot up to 47.8%. So the two large currency notes occupied close to 86.4% of the total currency market. Out of 16 billion, almost 14 billion was only these two notes. When it was demonetized, surprisingly, these are the results. It improved the advance tax, say, by 47.79%. And the personal income tax grew by 34.25%. Of course, the GDP, tax to GDP ratio did not increase. It did not increase. And it resulted in an undisclosed settlement of, say, 67,000 crores, which is hardly what, 10 billion. As against, imagine, 14,000 billion of 86% of currency usage. So the reasons they attribute: agrarian, informal, and most importantly, this is a fact-finding, they say you could do something with the local demonetization process, but you couldn't stop the international market, which kept on peddling money through structured channels, brought it up to the delivery point in a measured, structured way. And once you draw, then the recycling was completely under their control. And you keep recycling it any number of times you want. So, this I'll take only 2 minutes. There are 4 laws: the Black Money Act, the PMLA Act, the Income Tax Act, and the Benami Transaction Act. Income Tax Act Section 69 has been amended in an elaborate way where your local transactions, domestic transactions, which are black money, will be absorbed under that act. Black Money Act is for assets and income earned abroad. PMLA Act will apply the moment if this money is found to be money arising out of crime, proceeds of crime. Black Money Act is a pure tax enactment. It simply taxes you, punishes you with 30% and 90% a penalty. So 120% is the cumulative effect if the money is unearthed. Whereas PMLA is something which is a criminal offense as per schedule. And the schedule includes Black Money Act also. And Benami Transaction Act, now the benefits which was given to the original owner have all been taken away. So a Benami transaction completely gets captured to tax and treatment. So proceeds of money, offenses of money, how undisclosed foreign income asset, all this is 300% penalty. All this will finally go in that way. See, two takeaways at least for the youth, which I thought I should share it. The whole idea of conveying this 60-minute talk is for you to have a broad picture how this market operates. See, tomorrow you may become people. You may be high qualified professionals. You may access government services. You may be in high position. You may become ministers. You have a chance. You may get a chance to legislate. You may be anything. So have this in mind that somewhere over a period of time, see, you must be aware of, don't chase the husk, chase the grains, read subjects, read ideas, and find out what is actually intrinsically happening to the country. This awareness is a must. 2, post-COVID, post this globalization era now has proved to be an illusion. It will remain an illusion now. It's not going to be anymore what it was till March. Nothing is going to be affordable that easily. So we have to go back to the basics. So if you go back to a needy, thrifty economy with lot of savings and trying to live a simple and a frugal life, if greed is substituted by need, see, these are all things which as citizens we can do. Expecting a huge change, at a structural change, it's all connected with global phenomena. It's no longer in the control of a handful of people. Whatever happens somewhere else, it has an impact on India. See, with $470 billion as foreign reserves, which many countries cannot boast of, we can't be doing something which will collapse that. Then rupee will collapse. If rupee collapse, already we have enough problems with COVID. So this is something which all of you should plan in your mind as a takeaway out of this 60 minutes. If it serves this purpose in your mind, and if it instills or triggers these thoughts in your mind, then this 60 minutes is actually worth investing to all of you. Thank you once again, MTB. Thanks, APS, for the suggestion to talk. It didn't occur to me at all till you said day before yesterday. And thanks, Prativ. And I'm ready to take some questions.